We have a very special privilege today, arranged again by Paul and Marion Cruz, our good friends of Beth Torah, members of Beth Torah. And whenever they have someone who can really uplift us, inform us, guide us, particularly on what we've been facing since October 7th, Paul manages to find a place to bring that special person to us. So today, we have Shlomi Nahumson. There's an organization, and we think about it, right? We know there are far too many widows, far too many widowers, far too many orphans since October 7th. And even before that, it's not the only time that soldiers are killed in battle, but the numbers since October 7th have been really terrifying to us. So we worry about the war every day, but who worries about those people that are forgotten because they're not in the picture anymore? The orphans, the widows, and the widowers. Well, it's Israel. So you know who worries about it? Israel worries about them. And there is an organization, right, that takes care of the widows and the orphans. And Shlomi Nahumson has, and I know he knows it, it's a privilege. Mamish is a great privilege to serve as the CEO of that incredible organization. He has had many, many great experiences. He served with the IDF's youth department. He founded the Otzma program, and he himself personally served in the elite Nachal Brigade as a combat soldier. And this is what has created his leadership and his commitment to supporting the military families, and he himself, he and his wife, the father and mother of 4. So it's our privilege to welcome Shlomi to the Bima and to educate us about this great concern we have about who's worrying about the people left behind.
Thank you, Rabbi Faber. I'm here for less than an hour, and I can already say, Ma tovu ohalecha, how great your tents are. And I want to thank you. I want to thank Cantor Ashkenazi for this beautiful service. And I want to thank this Kehila Kedosha for inviting me here to hear about our work, to get updated about what's going on in Israel. But before I start, Cooper, Mazel Tov Achi. Happy birthday, happy bar mitzvah. Now, it's quite a unique phenomena in the global culture that it's your birthday, and we're not only wishing you happy birthday, we're not only celebrating with you, we're also delivering an important message to you. You now have a responsibility. You're becoming an adult, and this congregation is responsible for you. You are responsible for this congregation. The Jewish people is responsible for you. You're also responsible for the Jewish people. It goes both ways. And I wish you the best of luck when you begin the journey to adulthood. I saw the love of this congregation and the love of your family poured on you today, and I'm sure that you're going to be a wonderful Jewish adult person. So, Mazel Tov. I was thinking on my way here, what message should I be delivering? And it was difficult because sunny Miami is so different than Israel right now. Everything is so peaceful. Everyone is so polite. Everything is so easy. And I'm coming from a country where in the past 14 months, it's been very different. It's a wonderful place, don't get me wrong. This is home and there's no other, but it's been difficult. And I was reading the weekly portion, Parashat Vayetze, and I was looking for inspiration. And then I came here and I found all the answers here at this Kehila. And it begins at this plaque in front of me that says, remember. And when I read that and when I learned about the Holocaust Torah scroll, I thought about what I learned back in the days when I was a guide in Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum. In 1946, it was July 4th, actually the day before July 4th, Jews from a small town called Kielce starting to return to their village, to their town. They returned from Auschwitz, they returned from Birkenau, from Theresienstadt, from the worst places on earth. And they returned to their town seeking for relatives, seeking for friends, seeking for what's left from their community, seeking for their property, seeking for the first step in the future right after the Shoah, right after the war. And when the people, the Goyim, the people of Kielce, realized that they're coming back, and they were surprised. They thought all Jews were gone in the war. They were surprised to see some of them returning. They already lived in their homes. They already took over their property. They didn't expect that coming. And when they realized that the Jews of Kielce, not all of them, don't get me wrong, most of them did not return, but the few that did, when they realized that they're coming back, they started understanding that the war was not over the way they wanted it to be over. And on July 4th, and remember that date, it's significant not only because of the American independence, it's a significant date for other reasons. On July 4th, they committed a pogrom, now called the Kielce pogrom, and killed most of the Jews that survived Auschwitz and Birkenau. They killed them, and when that was known, most people in Europe realized that Europe is no longer a good place for the Jews. That if anyone thought differently, now everyone understands that the Jewish people have to take responsibility, ownership over their lives, over their future. And less than 2 years later, the State of Israel was established. And that was the very first steps of taking back ownership of our future. 30 years later, an Air France flight left the Ben Gurion airport from Tel Aviv to Paris. During the flight, PLO terrorists kidnapped the flight, hijacked the flight, and took it to Uganda. They asked for the release of terrorists with blood on their hands, and Israel government decided that they're not going to give in to terrorists. And they sent a unique elite force, much more qualified than the Nachat Brigade that I had the privilege to be part of. And on July 4th, 1976, that squad flew all the way to Uganda and rescued the hostages. Some of them were Israelis, some of them were Jewish. The non-Jews were released day before, so they only kept the Jews, regardless to their citizenship. Some of them were French, some of them were American, some of them were Israeli. But they kept the Jews in Uganda. And Sayeret Matkal flew all the way from Israel to Uganda and rescued them. But one soldier did not return, Yoni Netanyahu. Yoni Netanyahu was killed during that operation that is until today called after his name, Operation Yonatan, Mivtza Yonatan. And I take you years later, 14 months ago, on October 7, I think it was the first time that I was really scared, because I was maybe a little scared when I was a soldier and during the Second Intifada or the Lebanon War, but it was different this time for me personally, because now I was a father to 3, expecting my 4th child. And it was a different fear. We really thought that we're coming to an end of the state of Israel, an end for what we created in order to take ownership of our future. I was really scared. On that day, we lost many soldiers and civilians. Many were kidnapped to Gaza. 100 people are still held hostage in Gaza. And Israel is doing everything it can to rescue these people. On July 8, 2024, a successful attempt took place, and the Yamam, another elite unit, was able to rescue 4 hostages. On that operation, one of the officers, Arnon Zmora, Zichronah Livracha, died, and this operation is now named after him, Operation Arnon. I have the privilege to travel to Miami this week with Arnon's wife and their 2 children, Noam and Itai. Yesterday, the Jewish community of Miami sent them to Disney to have a couple of days of relief, to enjoy a very different world than the one they're coming from. And the reason I'm telling you this story, and especially you, Cooper, today we're not only celebrating, the reason I'm telling you that is that there's a very clear line between Kielce to Operation Jonathan, between Operation Yonatan to Operation Unknown, between this Torah scroll to the one I have in my synagogue in Kfar Saba, between you and him, and Noam and Itai, and Arnon and Jonathan. And that line says clearly that Kol Israel Arevim Ze Lazeh. We're all responsible for one another. If something happens to you here in Miami, we will vouch for you. If something happens to our soldiers in Gaza, we know we can rely on you. On this war, 36 widows were widowed pregnant. We had 36 children come into this world with this undesired status of IDF orphans. With the help of the Jewish community here in North America and the Israeli government and the Israeli society, we were able to ensure that every pregnant widow receives the best of medical care, of anything that they needed. But we also need to make sure that from this point and on, we will be there for the families of those who will not return, of Arnon, of the other soldiers who aren't coming back, and that we'll do everything in our power to make sure that they're never alone. And this is not only my responsibility, this is not only Israel's responsibility, this is all Israel, Arevim, Ze Lazeh. All of us are responsible for each other. And I want to extend this opportunity. I heard so many great things about this congregation, how firmly it stood and it keeps standing with Israel. Today we're in Miami towards the Jerusalem Post Conference on Monday and Tuesday, not only asking for your help, but also thanking all of you for what you did and what you will do. Before the war, there were so many arguments in Israel, between Israel to the other communities, so many arguments, and we really felt like we're sometimes torn apart. But the war proved us something different, that we're there for each other when needed. In times of need, we're always going to be there for each other. So Cooper, Mazel Tov Achi. Know that this congregation will be there for you whenever you need and whenever you want. Know that the Jewish people will be there for you whenever you need, whenever you want. And we will make sure that you'll have a safe, happy, fulfilling life, like we're making sure that everyone in this congregation and outside of it will have. Mazel Tov, Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for having us here.
Wow, what a privilege to have you here. And you just arrived, right? So obviously exhausted. And yes, Miami is the place of sunshine and peacefulness, but I'd like to find out where you were that you found politeness. You clearly have not been on Ivesbury Road or Aventura Mall yet. So I don't know where you were, but I want to know because I'm going there. All right? And the other thing that you mentioned about these orphans that they'll be taken care of, I've seen pictures of Tzahal orphans at their becoming B'nai Mitzvah. And you know who's always there? All of the soldiers who knew that soldier who had been killed and why the child was an orphan. And they're there, and they're all there, his uncles and their aunts. They become uncles and aunts. They become the big brothers. Their children become big brothers and sisters. And this bar mitzvah is always, or bat mitzvah, is just filled with so many people who embrace that youngster, and that youngster realizes they're not alone in the spirit of their father or mother who was killed in serving in Israel's armed forces. That spirit is there, and these people literally, they understand. They knew my dad. They knew my mom. They fought with them, and they're here at my bar mitzvah. So it gives a sense of presence of that loss. So the work that you're doing in that organization is really, in behalf of the Jewish people, a great act of gemilut chesed, an act of not only loving kindness, but fulfilling an obligation and a commitment that the Jewish people have made to the soldiers of Tzahal who put their lives on the line, literally. So we promise we will take care of their families should they have to make that ultimate sacrifice. So kol hakavod and much success in your efforts here in South Florida. You realize when you come to South Florida in December, you have most of the Northeast Jewish community down here as well. So you don't have to go up to their weather. You can reach them right here in the South Florida area. Musa.